Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Tawana Lee, aka the realest Ram. And today what I'm going to talk to you about is my time in the US Air Force. So I entered in February of 1998, going to MEPS in St. Louis, Missouri, and then it was off to basic training. Basic training is in Lackland Air Force Base, Texas. It was 6 weeks long at that time. I show up, I got a bunch of bags that I can't carry. So I'm one of those people in the videos that you see the TIs yelling, going, "Hey, if you can't carry it, you shouldn't have brought it." I'm just looking all crazy, dumbfounded, trying my best, just struggling. So yeah, that's me. At 17 years old, I got all these bags, signing my life up to the Air Force. After that, it's tech school. Tech school for me is at Keesler Air Force Base, Mississippi, where I am a member of the 333rd Mad Ducks. I graduate becoming a 3AOX1, which is an information manager, learning how to manage both hard copy and electronic records, the Privacy Act information, Freedom of Information Act, as well as setting up your electronic and computer profiles, and the mail, publications and forms as well. This is everything that I'm learning how to do. But when I get to my first base, Robins Air Force Base, Georgia, where I am assigned to the 78th Communications Squadron, I am assigned to the orderly room, which is the front office. There I am working, doing mostly personnelist work, which is a lot more of the paperwork. It's some of the stuff that I learned, but mostly it was managing, going like EPRs, or sorry, your evaluations. So the difference between a personnelist and an information manager is basically everything that I just told you. We manage that information, making sure that it is accurate, that it is meeting the letter, and all of that. We make sure that the communication is continuously flowing, whereas the personnelists, they are responsible for your evaluations, your reenlistments, your retirements, your next assignment, more things of that nature that has to do with you and your career. So I'm in the orderly room. I don't know what kind of troop I am. My supervisor once told me that I was quite a knucklehead, that I showed up late a lot. But I don't know. You know, when we think about when we were 18 years old, I don't know what I did. I was perfect. I don't believe them. Comment if you're watching this. Um, After that, I go to the F-15 System Program Office, where I learn about reservists. Let's turn this camera a bit. Where I learn about reservists. I am also in charge for setting up telephones in the section of the building where I am. That's what I am responsible for. So I did keep in contact with the communication squadron when I moved. I also then learned more about reservists, the difference between them and active duty members. Before I went to the F-15 SPO, though, I did 90 days on Honor Guard. As you can see from these photos, I'm in none of these. These are photos straight from Google. But I get more acquainted with my then becoming husband while I'm on Honor Guard. 90 days with this guy from down south. But nonetheless, on to my career. I get a new assignment and he comes along with me, but I am the one who's been in longer, so I am the one who gets to choose the assignment. So we end up at Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, where I am assigned to the 509th Civil Engineer Squadron. I learn about the customer service of when you're calling in trouble tickets for your home and within each squadron within the building. So I learned about that. Electricians, plumbers, heavy operators, firefighters, EOD, this explosive ordnance disposals, but the ones who take bombs apart. Anybody else that I have forgotten, my apologies. You know I love you, CE. After I have our first son, David, I asked to be sent over to the comm squadron because I know there's an opening and I get to expand more into my actual career field. There was an opening into the BITS, which is the Base Information Transfer Center. Those are the people who are responsible for the mail for the base. So I learned about exactly how the mail goes. I had previously been responsible for just the mail of my squadron, but now I'm learning for the entire base and learning about pouch mail, diplomatic mail, the civilian mail, and now on the receiving end, as a person who's receiving pouch mail and diplomatic mail, I know exactly what the mailroom in my embassy is going through. Um, After that, that's when my husband gets an email to try out for a job in North Carolina. I will talk more about him in his own separate video, but he nonetheless gets the job. He is then sent to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I go to Pope Air Force Base, North Carolina. Um, but before we head there, while I am in the comm squadron, I also fill in at the Security Forces Squadron for a couple of months. I do half days in comm and half days in Security Forces because they didn't have an information manager. And as you can see, I had won an award previously at my other base, but I continued throughout the rest of my career to manage information obviously very well. I made a lot of people upset because I was a stickler about the Privacy Act card covering up information, about making sure that we have our emails correctly, that we have the FOUO in the subject block, and all those types of things. So I'm doing 2 squadrons at one time, but you can guarantee that neither one of those squadrons were like below standards at that time. So when I get to LRS in North Carolina, I'm in the orderly room again, but I also go down to the flight level, which I did the flight level in COM. I forgot to mention that. Um, at COM in Missouri, I worked at the flight level, so I was in my husband's flight for a little while, and I learned more about the communications maintainers, but I managed all their records. So when I get to North Carolina, I'm in charge of actually 2 flights now, but that's only because they got separated. But it was vehicle operations and vehicle maintenance. They're different jobs, but I learned more about them. LRS as a whole, while I was there, I learned about POL, which is the fuel maintainers all on the flight line, and keeping the airplanes well gassed. I learned about supply readiness, which are those who keep you ready to deploy. Who else is in LRS? The big, no, that was supply. But anybody else that I have forgotten, I'm sorry. I love you too, Cobras, which is why you can see their photos up here as well. They won the base championship 3 and 4 years in a row, back to back. I was a member of the squadron back then, but I'm so proud of those guys. Um, my Air Force career ends right there in LRS. 10 years at that point, I had signed a form to say that I am not going to choose another career because at this point, the communications field, particularly mine, was starting to change. They were merging and changing and trying to go more into computers or more into office work. But it was a lot of change, and also the Air Force was downsizing, and the military was talking about base realignments. And Pope was supposed to be one of those bases that was closing, but they did not. However, I elected not to retrain. So I elected to separate upon the end of my enlistment, which would have been 2 years later. I was a little disgruntled toward the end of my time because I tested, I made E6, I put it on the stripes, I was in the ceremony, my squadron came and celebrated with me, only to find out that I wasn't supposed to get promoted because I chose not to retrain into another job. So the last 2 years of my career field, I was supposed to be in E6, but I was in E5. But I was upset. But for a while, I went ahead and turned that energy into focusing on finishing up my associate's degree to make sure that I used that free education that the military gave me. And I finished my career at Pope Air Force Base with an associate's degree and actually a bachelor's. I had already had my associates, but I completed my bachelor's degree before I left the Air Force, so I made it work for me. So with all that being said, that is what I did. If you have any questions about my career and any regrets or anything else that you would like me to expound on, please let me know in the comments.